Nearly every home and commercial building has a standard media type filter in it. Let's take a look at the limitations of that technology. Through understanding the limitations, then we can appreciate how alternative technologies, such as Secure Air, can address concerns that media filters will never be able to address. Secure Air's 5 critical air purification priorities are: number 1, to use particle control technology to remove airborne particles from the occupied space. Secondly, to inactivate those pathogens, viruses, and bacteria and destroy their ability to reproduce. Third, to have a capturing capability in the system so that we hold the contaminants in a space and don't let them go back out where people exist. Number 4, we will not create any additional byproducts that could also harm your health. And 5, we will not do anything that negatively impacts the performance of the HVAC equipment or distribution system. Airborne contaminants break down into 2 categories: particulates and VOCs, volatile organic compounds. There can be as many as 20 million particles per cubic foot. We breathe 17,000 quarts of air a day. It's almost unimaginable how much we're putting into our bodies that we're unaware of. These particles can be large down to very small. Large ones that we could see are about 100 microns in size or more. Those would be things like pollen and plant spores. The smallest particles, viruses and bacteria, are the hardest to capture, the hardest to eliminate from the living space. This graphic gives an example of the comparative size of a virus at 0.01 microns to a whole grain pollen. The VOCs, or volatile organic compounds, actually are brought into the home by us. Materials that we've used for construction off-gas. When we bring home chemicals that we use for cleaning or cooking or entertainment, like candles, we pollute the air with gases. There's some 200 chemicals floating around in the air, making a kind of chemical soup, and science has no idea what the combination of all these things could be and what the impact on our health could be. Your home is full of things that can be causing health issues, particles and gases and the like. One thing that surprised me when I was doing some research is that particles will mostly stay in the space no matter how much air is moving through the HVAC system. Think of it as particles suspended like fruit would be in Jell-O, and there isn't enough mass with the particle to get it caught up into the airstream and brought back to the filter. If there are 20 million particles per cubic foot, less than 100,000 would have enough mass to get caught up and brought back to the filter. That means no matter how good the filter is, no matter how high the MERV rating is, almost everything will stay in the air where you're living. This chart shows various particle sizes and what its settling velocity would be in air that isn't being stirred up. So it says that 100 micron particle, that's the size of 1 grain of pollen, would move about 59 feet in 60 seconds, or 1 foot per second. That's how long it would take pollen to settle to the ground. And a particle that's 0.1 microns, that would be bacteria, would move only 16 billionths of a feet in a minute. That essentially makes it suspended permanently. Or look at it this way. If we had a 1 micron particle on this chart, it would take 12 hours to settle to the ground if there were no air movement. Or a whole grain pollen would take 6 seconds. So out of 20 million particles per cubic foot, nearly all of them are staying permanently suspended given the little bit of air movement we have in the home most of the time. There are 4 different ways that media filters can collect particulates. First is called impingement, and that's where a particle would be impacted directly onto a media filter fiber. It just bangs into it and it sticks there. Second is interception, where a particle doesn't hit the filter fiber directly, but it's moving close enough so that it kind of gets stuck onto it. Third is diffusion. This has to do with a phenomenon called Brownian motion, What Brownian motion refers to is that all particles are moving around randomly, impacted by some other forces. So particles are moving around, jogging back and forth, and as they get into the airstream, if they're large enough to, then they'll kind of bounce into the fiber and get collected that way. And fourth would be straining. This refers to a particle being so large that it just gets caught in the space between two fibers. So how does Secure Air approach collecting particles and gases from the air? So let's now compare Secure Air's 5 critical air purification priorities with the limitations that we've just viewed with mechanical filters. First, Secure Air does have a capturing capability, the media filter, that will hold the particulates and keep them there, will not release them back into the airspace. Second, once particles are captured, any pathogens that are part of that particulate will be inactivated. It literally gets destroyed, gets killed, and it cannot reproduce, and it will not be sent back into the airstream. Third, there are no harmful byproducts produced. There is no electricity that creates ions. There is no charging that could create ozone, or no combination of other byproducts that could produce formaldehyde or other harmful byproducts that could affect you or your family's health. And fourth, the medium material that collects particulates and absorbs VOCs in Secure Air has a life of up to 1 full year. Its unique and patented technology will hold a year's worth of particulates and a year's worth of VOCs without significant increase in static pressure. That's an amazing performance, unprecedented actually. MERV's evaluation includes taking particle counts at different particle size ranges 6 times, begins with a clean filter, and then after it loads with a measured amount of dust, it will determine what the average efficiency is over that period of time. One interesting side note is that 2 ASHRAE research products have actually shown that there's an efficiency loss on some of the smaller particulates. This is because the smallest ones are the hardest for some phenomenon. And then MERV's testing is complete when the final resistance or static pressure has doubled what the initial static pressure has been. The primary reason for halting the test when static pressure doubles is because of the negative impact that static pressure has on equipment performance. That's Secure Air's priority number 5. As you know, when static increases, then everything negative that can happen with the HVAC system will. The system will get noisier, that's objectionable. The system's efficiency will reduce, that means utility bills are higher. We'll have a harder time getting proper airflow to the furthest parts of the house. That means comfort will go down. We don't do as good a job bringing particulates back to the filter. No matter how limited it might be, we're still doing it poorly. That impacts health, and restricting airflow will cause stress on the equipment, reducing its service life and increasing its maintenance and repair costs. All these things are negative when compared to filtration that can remove particulates and will not have an increase in static pressure. So keep all this in mind, and remember that Secure Air is committed to providing a whole house air quality solution that will enhance the health and wellness for all persons.